of very good. Thank you for that. So we are recording. We are recording today because we post this to our archives on the website so that people can come back after the fact. I was saying that we are one of the things that we find different ways to discuss each week is what is possible, and it's a mixture of what is possible in the online space and what is possible in a Dalcroze classroom. And then a lot of the time those questions combine, and some things are more one or the other. So welcome. I'll hand over to Veronica, who maybe will introduce. Oh, well, are we going to do a little greetings today? We're going to say hi to each other.
Yeah, let's do the breakout rooms.
So our tradition for most every one of these meetings is we take about just 2 minutes, maybe three at most, at the top, and I throw you into breakout rooms, and you're going to introduce yourself to whoever else is in the breakout room with you. And what we normally share is what is your name, where are you located, and who do you teach? Who do you teach? And so my students are the following. Everybody, you've got 3 minutes to introduce and say hi to some new people from around the world. Ready? Say hi. And we welcome everybody back. And hopefully you had just enough time to barely meet some people, and you wish you had a little bit more time to meet them all a little bit more, which is sort of the way things roll in a Dalcroze environment. If I had just a little bit more time, I could have been perfect. Veronica, do you want to introduce our guests today, our presenters?
Yes. So first we have Katie Couch, and she is sharing an improv game. Debbie Clem is also going to go and share an improv game. And then Bill Bauer invites you to Improvoice, a 7-minute jam session. So looks like today's unintentional theme is improvisation. And we'll ask you to stick to 5 minutes. I'll give you a 1-minute warning, but I'm very lenient because you all have cool things to share. But sticking to that time limit just leaves us time for a discussion afterwards about if people have questions or comments or ideas based on what you all shared. So with that, Katie, it's all yours.
Thank you. So I'm going to teach a quick piano improv game, and I'll probably be saying, I wish I had more time at the end of it, but please play along with us, and if you don't feel comfortable, you don't have to, but this is intended for everyone to play along. We're going to start with just a game with major triads. We're going to be in F major, so both hands can play F major chords, and I'd like you to play this rhythm. Okay, so we can all play along. Here we go. Now what I'm playing is I'm playing my outside of my hands and I'm arpeggiating inwards for those first two parts. So does everyone feel like they've got it? We're moving it up to G now. So up to the G major triad. Same thing, starting with your pinkies and arpeggiating in. 2 arpeggios and then 2 chords. Then we can go up to A. Got it? So we're gonna have this little pathway of this little motif. Goes from F major to G major to A major, back to G major, okay? Please let me know if I'm going too fast, because I probably am. Here we go, and G, here's A, and then we can end on F. So we're playing all major chords. Does that make sense so far? Okay, good. We can make this a little bit more fancy in the 2 chords part with a quick arpeggio. Ready? Let's try that. Here we go. F. Okay, that's our first pathway for this game. It's going all white key chords, well, F major, G major, A major. Any questions so far? Our second pathway is going to descend. So we're doing the same figuration with our hands, and you could do either rhythm pattern for the last part. But now we're going from F to E flat major down to D flat major and then back up, okay? So let's start. And here we go. F. Here's E flat. Makes sense? That's our second pathway. I'm not actually sure how many people are playing along. Can you raise your hand if you're playing along with me? Okay, so maybe like more than half the group. That's good. Let's do that second pathway, and then when we get back to F, we're gonna go up and do the first pathway, and we'll snake back around and end at F, okay? And here we go. It's... Here comes D flat. And we're going up. Like we're quite at an ending. It doesn't sound convincing as a cadence, but that's because this is a type of modal playing with all major chords, okay? So that was like level 1 of this game, and now I'm going to take it into level 2. Are there any questions about level 1? Okay, so the finger numbers that we're using right now are parallel, right? We're using 5s together, and then 3s, and then 1s, and then we play 5s, 3s, 1s, 5s, 3s, 1s, chord, chord, or ba-ba-ba really quickly. This time we're going to change it to be 5-2-1. So we're changing that pitch of the second note. So when we're in the F position, our left hand's playing F, B flat, C. Your right hand's playing C, G, F. Okay, so your hand is in that pentascale position, but you're just using 5s, 2s, and 1s. Okay, so let's try that same pattern, the first direction, going up to A and back down. Ready? And... Ready? Think about the black keys that you're going to have to play as you go down to E flat position and D flat position. Here we go. Sorry, oops, I got too fancy. Let's do that one more time going down. We'll do the arpeggios and the chords. Here we go. Veronica, how am I doing on time?
All right, we got 1 more minute.
Okay, thanks. Those are some basic hand positions and movements that you can do on the piano in terms of which direction you can go for this type of improv, which is, I'm loosely calling it quartal quintal, or I call it QQ in my own notes, because when you play this chord F, B flat, C, F, G, C, you're not playing any thirds. You're playing all fourths and fifths, and also some seconds and sevenths, but it's mainly fourths and fifths, so we can think of it as quartal quintal. It's a type of modal playing. There's no like chord progressions, like dominant to tonic cadences. It's all based on directions that you can move at the piano. So that is what I wanted to teach you, was this quartal quintal hand shape, but also the rhythm that I'm using is not a normal type of rhythm either. What's happening in the rhythm? Lauren? Yes? It's not quite 5. It's like 3, 3, 2. So it's unequal beats. So what I want to present to you today was this idea of using a non-tonal way of playing for a type of rhythm that's not as strict and straight as we're used to hearing in music. So pairing those two things together. I think I'm out of time.
So, Katie. That was really helpful, and we can't wait to discuss it and kind of dig into it a little bit in the discussion. I'm going to pass it on to Debbie. Debbie, go ahead.
Okay, can you hear me okay? Everybody hear me? Okay, so I'm gonna take a totally different track from Katie. Katie's my teacher. And everybody, if you could just stand where you are, we're going to start out and we're just going to be a very stiff noodle. So I don't know if you can see this, but it's a pasta, piece of pasta. Okay. So we're very, very stiff from our head to our toe and tighten up, hands, everything. Just a minute, I'm going to set my timer here so I know what I'm doing too. Okay. And then I have this big pot of boiling water and I'm going to throw you all into the water and we're going to start to, it's going to boil and we're going to start to loosen up and just feel yourself like just becoming this more fluid, moist, maybe a little bit sticky, very tasty, soft, and noodly. And sort of interact a little bit because noodles, as you know, kind of get all wound up together. So you can actually interact with someone else on the screen and kind of get wound up with their noodles too. Okay. Then we're going to take a big breath and turn around and start our game. And the game is an improv game, but I've taken it from a theatrical improvisation and kind of worked it into Dalcroze improv, and it's called Spaghetti. So what I will do, I will say a word, for example, sad, and choose a place where it can be your place to return to. If we can kind of if I was in a classroom, I would have a big circle and we would all, when I say the word like sad, one person at a time would step into the circle and then step back. At home, you can use like a hoop or the children could have a spot or something where they can return to their home base after they have said the word. So I'll give you an example. So I'm gonna say sad. And I do have cards in case you can't hear. And then fill your body with that sadness. Step forward and say, spaghetti, very sadly. And then keep the emotion and take it back to your spot. And when you're back in your spot, you can just kind of let it go. So here's the next word. Hopefully if English isn't your first language, you'll tell me so I can explain. So the next word is tentative. Everybody try it. I can't believe I'm already running out of time. What I'd like to try next is accompanying you with the next word. And anybody who would like to just try accompanying the movement, go ahead and do it. Whatever instrument you have handy. And I'll give the word and I will just give you an example accompaniment and it'll be very free form and maybe even 2 or 3 notes. So the next word is slithering. Here we go. Oh, it's so fun to watch, you guys. Would somebody like to be the accompanist for the next one? You can even do just 2 or 3 notes if you want.
Like Laura is volunteering.
Okay, so our next is way too happy. I love it. Do we have another person willing to accompany? You can just play 2 notes.
Marlene?
So the next word is superhero. Oh, that was fantastic. Thanks, Marlene.
Thank you.
I think we're just about out of time, but we'll do one more if I have another accompanist that's brave. Katie. Okay. Oh, Lisa. Okay. Super villain. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Debbie, for inviting us all to play with you.
Thanks, everybody.
Bill, please take it away.
Okay, so I believe I'm unmuted. I hope that's true. Let's sing. Please, could we unmute everybody? I want a choral texture. Unmute. We're going to start simply. Sing pitches that you hear just as a follow-up. Unmetered.
Bum, bum, bum.
Two pitches and you can choose one or the other. So I can sing this or I can sing this pitch. If you pick pitches, choose from among them. Da da. Da, da.
Bill, could you repeat your instructions again? You got kind of cut off.
And if I go back to one pitch, then we all simplify. So the first rule of the game is just listen to the call of the piano and respond by using these pitches to create a phrase. So if you hear, for example, da, 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 da.
Sorry, I'm just going to step in here because a number of people are saying they can't hear you anymore, Bill. So I just muted everybody to put a pause on it. Bill, would you mind just unmuting yourself, and could we try it with all of us on mute? I know it's not as satisfying, but I think we'll be able to hear your instructions better.
Oh, okay. Sure. So that means each person is just singing individually.
Yeah, I think when people started singing, I lost being able to hear you. Like I couldn't hear the piano anymore, and I was getting some weird like underwater echoey singing, but I don't think we could hear enough of you for it to continue.
The Zoom algorithm really just is forced to choose basically one. So it tries to flick back and forth between whatever it thinks is the one most present sound. So the gold box around my head right now is Zoom saying I'm focusing on that one. And if someone else starts talking at the same time, Zoom has to choose between the two. It's really, we haven't found a good way to use Zoom for shared choral sound. Most of our compromises have had to do with what Veronica just described, where we all have to kind of catch our own overlap.
Are you hearing me?
Now we can, absolutely.
Okay. Somehow it went on mute too. I don't know what caused it to go mute, but
I muted everyone. It was like a host overpowering kind of thing.
Oh,
so
okay.
I muted everybody, and then I asked you to unmute specifically.
Okay. Well, that's unfortunate only because the entire premise of my game was to create a choral texture. So, I mean, I can try to regroup and just have people sing individually. Do you want to try it that way and see how it goes?
Yeah, let's try it.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, as we started the meeting today, a lot of the, the sort of subtext of the BDM has been what is possible. And so we have a goal to try to get a choral texture in a technology that isn't really great at that right now. And so what's possible? So and Bill is like the perfect person to put in the hot spot to try to figure out something that we can, we think, well, what could we do if we can't do exactly what plan A was?
Okay. Well, so let me just jump to something related to what I was doing. Some of you were experimenting with different vowel sounds. And so I've prepared something to put up on the screen to look at that just shows different vowel possibilities. And it's not in the IPA, so don't worry if you don't know how to interpret IPA. I'm going to share my screen now just to show you what I mean. It looks like this. And if you start on the left and go across, the vowel sound is E, which is a long sound. The Y suggests a brightening of the tone. And then I, a short vowel. Then A, a brightening of the and then E. And then A as in at, as in love, ah, and then awe as in off or awful, as in up, and ooh. So these are all different vowel possibilities for you to play around with as you explore listening to the pitches that I'm playing on the piano and responding to them with your voice. Does that make sense? Yes? Okay. Here we go. So that's my attempt at reconstructing my game.
Thank you.
Excellent. There you go. So Bill, can I start with you? Will you describe what you maybe what you would be able to do in the live room, like if we were all in the same room together, or if Zoom was doing, was a little bit more willing to make multiple audios overlap?
Well, so what I'm trying to develop here is what I call synchronous call and response, so that instead of having a call and then a response as in a broken cannon, for example, where you echo game, what I wanted to do was a very Dalcrozian exercise in responsive listening and responsive singing. So instead of moving with your body, you would actually hear changes in the music, and as you hear those changes, you respond with your voice. So the voice becomes the mover, and you create a traveling vocal line built out of the pitches that you're hearing coming from the piano. The idea also was to develop it into a textural game where we also worked with dynamics, so that as the response or signal would be, as the piano gets louder, your voice goes higher. As the piano gets quieter, your voice gets lower in pitch. And so, as we know in phrasing and dynamics, very often there's a correlation between a rising line and a crescendo. So I wanted to explore that nuance of dynamics in the game, so to speak. The last piece of the puzzle, which I didn't expect to get to, was to contrast the phrasing of the piano. So if you hear pitches staccato on the piano, you sing sostenuto legato vocal lines. But once the piano starts to sustain, then we start peppering the texture with bips and bops. So I thought it could become very Dalcrozian and very interactive, and also really try to create a gorgeous sound coming at us from our mutual interaction. But we'll need another vehicle besides Zoom.
Well, it occurs to me that most all of that is quite possible as we're going through. The only thing that's hard to catch, or maybe impossible to catch, is that feedback from the community. But for the basic game of when the piano or the leader is doing this, you do that, or look for opportunities to evolve, I think absolutely doable, and really could, and I'm sure would be quite effective. So thank you so much for the idea. I've been a student in classes where we've done something similar rhythmically, but I've been in fewer classes where we do the sort of solfege version of this unfolding, indication.
I just very quickly and say that, yes, it would be possible to follow all of the rules that I just laid out using Zoom in the way that we just did. But in terms of the aesthetic experience that I was trying to produce, unfortunately, that's impossible. And for me, that was the ultimate goal, was to give everybody an aesthetic experience and also a rare opportunity to vocalize in concert with other people without having to worry about whether we were metrically aligned. That, to me, was the piece of it.
Very nice. Laura?
I just wanted to say that this is to Bill. I participated in something online by Pauline Oliveros, and it was a piece like what he's talking about. Everybody just sang a note, and there were about 80 people who did it, and it was amazing. So it can be done, but I don't know if the person who was hosting had some special kind of thing that we weren't feeding in and out, and it may be because it was with 80 people. Because like with Bill, when I've done it with like 10 people, it doesn't work. It was the same problem we had. But when it was 80 people, it was great. So I don't know, like I said, if they did something special, but it did work.
Yeah.
And we were just on Zoom.
Interesting. Veronica?
I think they must have done something special, Laura, because I was on a call with 120 families at my school. And they were like, we can sing together. And I was like, it's not gonna work. It's not gonna work. And they're like, we're gonna try it. And then like within 3 seconds, everyone on the call is like, ah. So I do think that there is a special software. One that I've heard about recently is called Clean Feed. And apparently you mute yourself on Zoom and Clean Feed is running simultaneously, and it allows the sounds to kind of merge and overlap, and you can interrupt each other. And then there's another one, Greg Risto was posting a lot about it on Facebook. It's either SoundJack or Jack Trip. It has the word Jack in it, and one of them is really old and the other one is the more up-to-date program. And then there's another one that people recently told me about. They said that the one with the Jack in it,
Jack Trip
no user interface.
Foundation.
Sorry?
Called Jack Trip Foundation.
Okay. So Jack Trip Foundation, they said they has no user interface. So if you don't know stuff about computers, good luck. And then this other one that has something, I think it's called Jamboozle or Jamify or something with the word, maybe something.
I think it's Jamulus.
Jamulus, that's it.
Jamulus, yeah.
That one apparently has a user interface, so it's a little more friendly for those of us who are less geeky, and but still has some bugs in it. So basically, like, I'm not going to use it with my kids, but maybe adults could handle it.
Okay, well, that's helpful. Thank you.
Very good. Thanks so much, Bill. Everybody, we have a good 20 minutes plus a little to just talk about any of it. So is there comments or questions for any of our presenters, or what would you like to talk about or to point out? Come on, we know. So yeah, go ahead, Jeanette.
I just want to ask Bill the instruction at the beginning because I didn't hear what the first instruction was at all.
Was that from Bill?
Can you repeat?
Oh, my instruction?
Yes, like the one that you attempted to do, the very beginning. You said you play 3 notes and we have to respond to what?
Listen and use the pitches you hear to create a vocal phrase.
Okay. Use the pitches we hear to create a
vocal phrase.
Okay.
So, for example, if you hear da 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 da.
Very good. Makes a lot of sense. Good. What others? What else on this?
Monica?
Hi, hello everyone. Is Katie back?
Yes.
She's here.
Hello. I can't see. Hi. I'm going to. Yeah. So Katie, I did play along with your lovely triads, and I was just wondering if you could perhaps tell us how you would develop the exercise from there.
You mean for like playing for your rhythmics class or for just pure improv?
Well, I was wondering whether you'd used it as whether you used it just for yourself or whether you used it in improv teaching and how you would, how you would develop the.
Yes, unfortunately, I can't play any examples because now both my daughters are sleeping, but I can just talk a little bit about that. Maybe Lauren could play for me though. I do use this kind of chordal quintal harmonization with movement classes, rhythmics classes, mostly for like tapping activities, not for locomoting through the room, but more for like tapping or gesturing, just because I feel like it doesn't have enough harmonic drive to really help people to move through a space, but more for like small motor games. And I do teach it into my improv students, but I use it more for playing for movement games, I would say, than as an improv game itself.
Okay.
Yeah. Does it answer your question?
Yeah, great. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Marlene?
I love Deborah's game, being that I'm still highly involved with children all day long, and to see them respond to, turn themselves into a feeling, and the way you frame this particular game, connecting your ear and then putting a feeling into your body to music, it really sat very well with me. I really liked it. Thank you.
You're welcome. Some of the children I worked with this summer were my grandchildren, and they were very isolated. They were in a tiny room, and the neighborhood kids would actually jump over the fence and come to class, which was great fun. But they had so little space that they love playing spaghetti. They could do it all day. They still play it, which I think is a sign of a good lesson if they play it after you're gone. But they would actually jump off the couch and emote. And this has endless possibilities. Once you get into it, it gets to be quite ridiculous, actually.
So much fun. What else? What else can we talk about today? Yeah, Veronica and Catherine.
I really appreciated Debbie's invitation to be a noodle. Like that really worked for me, that I was a stiff noodle. And then you said, now you've been put in hot boiling water, and it gave me such an image. And when you said, oh, now you're sticky and you get twisted up, it was just, I think I usually tend to use, I don't know, being a seed that grows up to get my body warmed up, right, with kids, but being a noodle, I don't know, it just kind of opened up whole new worlds. What else can we borrow from the kitchen?
Catherine and then Louise.
I was going to echo the pasta thing. I've done the dried pasta to cooked pasta exercise with little children for years, but lying on the floor. So we're a piece of pasta in the packet lying on the floor, and then I go around and pour imaginary boiling water on top of them, and they just sink into the floor really beautifully. So I really loved it. I've got a question too about chords on Zoom, just thinking about the problems that Bill had. I'm trying to do some interval recognition with my classes, and so I'm playing 2 notes at once, and I've found that it's better to play the bottom note and then add in the top note than to try and play both at the same time. And I'm also thinking it's easier if you play from middle C upwards rather than lower ones. And I just wondered if that was other people's experience. It's just really hard when you're teaching to know exactly what your students are hearing. So I don't know what other people's experiences are. I'd be really interested.
Well, I'll share mine, and then if anybody else has more to add to it. I think that everybody working with the latest version of Zoom, if we're on Zoom, the latest update, and everybody needs to have it. So if one of you has the latest and someone else has an older one, though sometimes those updates will not talk well to each other, will not speak well back and forth. So if everybody's on the same version back and forth, that makes a big deal. And then there are settings under your audio settings about background noise, about automatic microphone adjusting versus not automatic, original sound. And in the later versions, there's something called high fidelity music mode. And so working with all of those settings can yield a much improved interface. If we're on a older version that doesn't have that high fidelity, or if you have it but your student doesn't, then there can be a lot of confusion back and forth with the two. So just double checking those things.
Yes, I've got the high fidelity in the latest version. I'm not sure all my students have or are capable of having, if some of them are on laptops and some are on phones. And what do you think about chords? Is it easier with just 2 notes or bigger chords? How?
In my experience, and like in Louise's class just this week, she did lots of playing and we heard lots and came through crystal clear. So I think generally, I haven't had that problem or noticed that problem. And yeah, they've come through. Another solution, though, if you continue to have trouble with it, would maybe be to, if you had, like, you can play recordings through your computer. You can share your computer's audio sound, and those also come through quite clear. So depending on the exercise. Anybody else have any experience with chords or multiple notes at once, or have run into any troubles with that? Melissa?
Yeah, I was just going to say that I haven't had any problems like playing the simultaneous notes, the intervals harmonically, and my students seem to be able to hear them. But I do caution in going too far into the bass, too far down in the lower pitches, because I feel like once I get past a certain point, they have a lot of trouble hearing the lower pitches. So you have to just see what works on that score.
It was the compound intervals. I found that it was better when they were bigger than an octave, if I played them together, they couldn't always tell whether it was the small interval or the bigger one. So that's when I decided to do bottom note and add in the top one.
I see. Yeah, so if there's some distance between them, that could be very similar to what Melissa's describing, and that the range, the audio range of Zoom is definitely limited compared to actual acoustic sound. You know, the high highs and the low lows, things shatter and crackle, and so maybe if what you were dealing with were large intervals, that could be that really could be a problem. Thanks for bringing it up for us all to be sort of, you know, continuing. I think we're all constantly trying to figure out what do our students hear, what does it make sense to them, and that's a really hard thing to figure out. Yeah, Louise.
Regarding that specific issue, I think that we have the same problem also when it's acoustic. The children or the students, they have a harder time singing when it's not in the voice range, in their voice range. So that is normal, I think, you know, to have more difficulty when you're going higher or lower. It's hard because it's not related to their voice range. So yeah, and you were saying that you would play the interval from the lower pitch to the higher pitch. I know that sometimes in the solfège, I do that from lower to higher, and sometimes I play them together and I ask them to sing from higher to lower. So, you know, so that they can focus on, you know, whatever. If you have 3 notes, then they get used to try to find the middle one or the higher one or the lower one. So these are all exercises, great exercises to develop the hearing. Regarding the noodle, I was thinking that it's a good exercise to develop in a student, whether it's an adult or a child, the feeling of being keeping attention in the body or trying to be relaxed. So some people have difficulty be relaxing. So this is a good exercise for them to feel that it's different than when you are stiff with like the noodle, when the noodle is not cooked. And on the contrary, some people are always a little bit like much like this. So to be like the noodle before being cooked, it's good for them to have that feeling. So it's a very good image to develop contraction and relaxation in the students. So Deborah, that was a good idea for that, a good image, I think.
Thank you. Something else you can do if you're in person, I know most people aren't, but you can also maybe have the kids do it with each other if you have more than one, is because children are much tighter than you think. It's amazing how stiff those little bodies can be. And so you can have them like lift an arm and let them, I mean, if you actually go to them and lift an arm, you'll find this tense little arm and you can get them to relax it. It's such a lifelong skill.
Melissa and then Bill.
Yeah, adding to the noodle conversation, the sticky pasta perspective, I just wanted to say, I thought it was really fun, Debbie, when you said to see about like sticking with someone else, and like, I wanted to do more of connecting with what other people were doing, because I feel like there's a lot of activities that we're doing, sort of listening and moving on our own, you know, being alone together, as Michael Joviala had said. But I think there's more we can do to, even though we don't know who's looking at us, if we saw a certain like crazy noodle shape that we could copy, or I feel like there could be more interaction even on Zoom. We could reach out and someone else might try to match us. I don't know. It just, yeah, I feel like there can be more connection somehow. Just a thought.
No, absolutely. One of the challenges with that, so obviously, I mean, not obviously, clearly though, it is very possible to sort of direct our students to see the screen and see all the people. And I think a lot of us have been experimenting with pick somebody out on the screen and try to follow their motion, or choose that they are, even if they don't know it, they're your partner. And so you're going to do things back and forth. One of the problems I've found with that is that the boxes in many cases are so teeny that it's really hard to, you see people like really having to lean in and so they have no room. We've been doing some work where I'll tell my students to pin. So under the little blue dots on people's little boxes, you can pin someone. You might experiment now, and it doesn't change the experience for everyone else. If you pin, it's just a way for you to have chosen somebody to look at, and they don't necessarily even know you're looking at them, but you've made them large on your screen. And so that's a way that you could have sort of chosen somebody without them necessarily knowing, and then you can see them a little more easily, and then you can unpin them when you want to see the crowd. And so there's been some nice things there, you know, just to play around with to make that vision on the screen a little bit larger. Bill, what were you thinking?
I just wanted to say that when I was working a lot with children, I would often use a rag doll and just allow it to be floppy and show what it feels like to be floppy, and then let them enact being a rag doll. I'm sure other people have done that too. But then there was another thing that is kind of fun, and it rhymes with noodle, and it's called doodling. And it's when you use your body and you doodle with your body as if you were doodling on a piece of paper. And it's a great way to get kids and adults to improvise with their bodies without having to think too much about what they're doing.
Love that one. Yeah, and I think now immediately everybody in the room can think of like 20 ways that you could use that nugget to like spin out into all sorts of other ideas. Which to me has always been like my favorite part of these meetups is you get this little nugget of something and you think, oh, I know how I could deal with that with my students and what we could do if we were going to doodle for a little bit.
I can take credit for it. Actually, it's Harry Streep's idea. Harry Streep is Meryl Streep's brother, and he's a professional dancer, and he works a lot with kids.
Nice. Such a good one. Monica?
I wonder if this would be a good moment to just have a quick chat about Louise's class.
Oh,
I had
sure.
a question. I don't know whether we've done noodling and doodling. Are we done with that for now?
Okay, go ahead. We have about 8 minutes left, so let's take a couple minutes.
So I was the piece made such a big impression on me. I was really taken by it, and I went and yesterday I spent some time looking at all the recordings that I could find, or sorry, not looking, listening to the recordings, and I was just rejecting them all because none of them I don't think were the one that Louise used. So I'd love to know which one that was. But interestingly, I don't know whether anybody else has done that, and I'd be so interested to know if anybody else has. But quite a lot of the recordings are sung by a countertenor rather than an alto, and I looked at the piece and it said it's for alto or countertenor, and the countertenor ones, I mean, I'm sorry, that just was no way it's for a countertenor because of having heard it with the alto and the image in my head and how we worked on it. It just couldn't possibly have been sung by a man. And I'd love to know if anybody else had listened to them, and also what Louise thinks.
So Louise, do you want to talk anything? Can you tell us? I mean, I'll let Louise start.
Well, I did listen to other recordings because we have a little problem with the recording I've used for with the YouTube thing. I didn't realize that when and I was also surprised with some of the interpretations. You know, I thought, oh, this is not how I hear it. However, there was one or two with countertenor that I thought was interesting, and in fact, I will send you the links. Maybe you would be interested to listen to it. But it's very interesting, and that is something so wonderful to do when you have a piece of music and you have people who perform that piece of music, to listen to the different interpretations. It's so enriching because you discovered various things depending on who is performing the piece. One thing that really struck me about that these different recordings that you were talking about is the tempo they use. The tempo, the choice of tempo when you perform a piece of music. what tempo will you be using? It's so interesting, you know, just listening to various recordings, you know, famous pieces of music conducted by different conductors, and listen to the tempo they take. It makes a difference sometimes from one interpretation to another. So I think it's interesting. It could be interesting to do a Dalcroze class on one piece of music using various interpretations and see how it affects the movement and the feeling. That could be a good subject. Yeah. Yeah, it's a good idea.
For anybody who wasn't there, Louise led a beautiful masterclass this weekend. I mean, it really was just classic. It was outstanding use of Zoom and a very enriching and thought-provoking and beautiful hour and a half together. So you still have access, if you choose to register for the master classes, that you could see back the recording of the class. There was an issue when we went to upload it to YouTube. YouTube flagged it for copyright problems because we included a recording in the class, and they've got algorithms that can scour to know, you know, if a recording is included. So we're already discussing different versions and different ways of sharing the exact recording that was used in the class with the people who register. And then also here are some, I don't know, convenient other links where you can hear the piece. Was it Anita whose hand was up?
Yeah, I was just going to make a comment about that. I remember years ago hearing a recording of Granados playing one of his very famous pieces. And of course, it was this old cylinder recording. It was, you know, so scratchy. But the tempo that he chose was so much faster than I'd ever heard that piece of music played before. And to me, it didn't sound Spanish anymore. But of course, he was Spanish. He knew exactly how it should be. But because culturally we've got used to it at this different speed. But to me, it felt it had lost the passion. It was interesting.
I think that idea Louise is bringing up about, you know, having a class where you compare multiple interpretations, to me it feels absolute dead center in the middle of some of our Dalcrozian ideals. I mean, to me the whole point of the plastique is to body a specific opinion. I have an opinion about this piece. I'm going to demonstrate my opinion. And it's a way of really sort of digging us in to like commit to a tactile, visceral, literal opinion. Like, this is what I believe. And for me to move it any other way would be to highlight a different attention. And so when I lead whatever my crowd is through a plastique sort of exercise, I often say, you know, if you were the conductor of a given piece, you're not an octopus with 8 arms and you can sort of acknowledge everything. You only got 2 arms and 2 eyebrows and a hip. And so you have to choose. You have to choose what you're going to acknowledge. Where, you know, what do you prioritize? What do you value in this piece? And as a conductor, you can't value everything. You can't value all the notes. You have to value this one over that one, and you can set up hierarchies. There's only so many things you can indicate. And what I love about the plastique, and actually the part that for me has been the most enriching, is the fact that I can't show everything. And so I'm forced to choose. And so when I invite my university students into a plastique anime environment, we say, well, there's 4 of you maybe. So if there's 4 of you, now you actually have 8 arms. So what could 8 arms of a conductor demonstrate? And what about 8 legs? And what about 4 bobbing heads? And what about bodies near and bodies far? How much of this piece could you reveal if we use a combined set of bodies to highlight your collective interpretation? But even in that case, we'll hand it to the next group with the same piece. They're going to highlight other things. And to me, I just find that absolutely critical and exciting, and how they both could be quite valid and yet highlight different ideas. We've only got a minute or maybe 2 if we cheat. So anybody else want to offer a closing statement that isn't me? I have a closing statement if I must, but. Well, I'll just then wrap it back to Katie, who started us off. The idea that the way I understood, Katie, what you were demonstrating was, here's some, maybe for Stephen Neely, these would be some new sounds under your hands. And what's really wonderful about that is that I'm sure all of us have our go-tos. Whether you think of yourself as a longtime piano improviser or you're brand new to it, as soon as you get going with anything, we all sort of fall into what's comfortable, and looking for, or actually actively searching out ways to be uncomfortable or to invent new sounds or new ways of reinventing myself, new ways to lead, so that things remain fresh. And now all of a sudden I have more opportunities in front of me. I think those types of ideas are so valuable. And so Katie, thank you so much for offering that one to us. And it was something that I think everybody in the room could right away, go ahead and experiment with that and make good use of it. So another great example.
Thank you.
Well, friends, it's 1 after the hour. And so with that, we respect your time and we invite you. Veronica, what's coming up? Can you
we have a meetup in 2 weeks, November 10th or 11th. And then we have a masterclass with Elda, who popped in to say hello. Hi, Elda.
Hey, it's Elda and Ellie. So Elda's in Mexico, and we've seen Elda in Pittsburgh, and we've seen Elda in Geneva, and we've seen Elda in Miami. And so Elda's been around and in the community for quite some time, and we're really excited to feature her in the next masterclass. So I hope everybody will sign up, and we'll see you at the meetup, and maybe we'll see you at the masterclass. And I'm going to stop the recording and say thanks.
Thanks.
Bye.